Good morning, welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this early Saturday morning. Yes, it is early. It is only 8:30 and it's 9:30 in Europe. Go over it. It is. There's lots to talk about this morning because Celtic have been making the media around Europe, and a lot of people will say for the wrong reasons. Chris Sutton says the most staggering thing, well maybe not, out of Brendan Rodgers' presser is him saying that he hasn't had a contract offer on the table. Does Chris Sutton listen to any of the press conferences during the summer? Because it was during the summer that Brendan Rodgers said that they had a meeting and this year's Champions League not have a concrete offer. No manager in football history gets a contract offer this early on in the season. There's never been a manager that I can think of that gets an offer this early. It's always after Christmas. There are people within the media that would love to get rid of Brendan Rodgers out of Celtic. There are people within the media there are people within Celtic that would love to get rid of Brendan Rodgers. France 24, they're running with the headline, Rodgers calls out cowardly leak amid Celtic civil war. I don't think it is a civil war that's going on at Celtic. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't think it's a civil war at all. It's the fans and someone in the board doesn't like Brendan. They went behind Brendan's back and they tried to do a little sneaky deal with the Sun newspaper, which is despicable on its own. You know, going to the Sun. Anyway, Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers hits out a cowardly briefing to the media from Report Club Insider on Friday as fans of the Scottish champions plan to ramp up protests against the club's board this weekend. That is New France 24 talking about it. And then there's a lot of criticism of the American manager with his snub for Cameron Carter-Vickers and Trusty. Algerian soccer, talking about a certain player that's joined Celtic that Brendan Rodgers worked with before. Nigerian striker joins the Scottish champions as a free agent after parting ways with Sevilla shortly before the transfer window closed. He had a difficult spell in Spain, scoring just 3 goals in 11 appearances across all competitions. His loan move to Middlesbrough in January also failed to reignite his career, but Brendan Rodgers is confident that his 28-year-old arrival at Celtic Park will have a strong impact. Rodgers told Celtic TV he noticed the success he shared at Leicester and expressed hope in reviving his career in Scotland. That's one thing about Brendan Rodgers. He is a manager that can bring out the best in players. And talking about best in players, let's get to the elephant in the room. Brendan Rodgers saying that he knew since February, which goes against the grain, against what a lot of people were saying. People were saying Dyson wants to stay at Celtic. He doesn't want to upset his family and not want to move. But since February, Dyson Maeda has wanted to leave Celtic to go and better his career for his family. That's all I'm saying. Drop the mic moment. Rodgers saying in public yesterday quite a few things throughout the interview. And I'm going to call out, nobody should ever go to footballinsider247.com because that clown, Peter O'Rourke, comes out with stupid exclusive. And he's done another one this morning. Brendan Rodgers close in on Celtic exit after talks collapse. He is one of the worst alleged journalists that has anything to write about Celtic, and his consistent bullshit articles about exclusives coming out of Celtic Park is absolute nonsense. Peter O'Rourke should be ashamed of some of the shite that he puts out about Celtic and claims as exclusives. They're nothing but that. everyone knows the situation. Brendan Rodgers spoke about the transfer and the contract negotiations, the very, very first interview of the season. They spoke about the meeting that he had. Let's just talk about factual evidence that we have without making up bullshit like Peter O'Rourke of fucking Football Insider. One of the worst pages on the internet. Brendan also said that Maida put everything in for 4 years. Don't blame Maida for wanting away, says Mikey Boy. Just catching up with some of the comments. Yeah, that's true. But Brendan Rodgers also said that, and he said it a few months ago. He said there are people that have been here for 4 years. And I told you, Brendan Rodgers always gives you little snippets. And when it comes to a certain point, it all makes sense. It all makes sense what Brendan Rodgers is saying. Kisbell says, get Rodgers out. I support Celtic, not Rodgers. He knew the score when he joined. He can't be trusted. Simple as that. Interesting. Gizabel obviously fancies the board for being completely truthful with Celtic fans. It is all about opinions, mate. And anyway, I thought Brendan played a blinder yesterday. Just my opinion. You can see where some of the fans, I'm not here to talk about that. You all have your own opinions, and that's why it's called the One Celtic Fans View, and you get to have your opinions in the chat bit. I'm not putting opinions on the screen because the last thing I want is all your nonsense written on the screen when I'm live. Anyway, Celtic. Brendan Rodgers, the manager of Celtic, says, I wasn't surprised because I've known since the end of February where Dyson was at, said Rodgers. We've spoke a lot. He's continued to give everything in his game, his training. He had a few options to go and ones that would have been great for him and his family in terms of his life, but it didn't materialise. So now is my job, he's here again, is to convince him to go again. I've done that with players before. I had Luis Suarez nearly at the end of my first time. It was deemed he was going to Arsenal. I had to convince him to stay, and he ended up having an amazing season. Brendan Rodgers was asked cheekily at the press conference yesterday, and fair play to the Celtic media. I don't know who it was, but it was obviously Celtic media. It wasn't mainstream media. So hats off to the Celtic media guys that were there yesterday, because they got really to the point. And I think for the first time in a long time, I've seen the Celtic media guys up their game above the mainstream media. And this is what I want Celtic media to do. When you've got the privilege to go in there and speak to Brendan Rodgers, I want Celtic media to elevate their questions above anything that the mainstream media will do. Because the mainstream media have a narrative. And, you know, their narrative is what it is. But fair play and hats off to the Celtic media guys that were there yesterday for upping their game and upping the questions and getting straight to the point to Brendan. And coming out and saying to Brendan, I take it Dyson will be gone at the next window. And Brendan laughed and said, let us get over this one. Jesus, we're 2 weeks. We're not even 2 weeks over this window. And you're trying to talk about the next window. And that little bit of sense of humour from Brendan, do you know, understanding that the fans want answers. Understanding that the fans want answers and understanding how to run the football club. And that's all Brendan needs to do. He needs to come out and run the football department, not the club. He needs to run the department. He went on to say, it's now my job. He's here. We need to go again. It's not new to my career. Players will have challenges, but I think that everyone else who sees the integrity of which he works, how he plays and how he can reconnect all of that again, I'm pretty sure he will give his all whilst he is playing. A lot of us did see it, how Dyson Maeda at his peak, there's a couple of goals over the last couple of months that Dyson would have hammered into the back of the net. And I got a lot of stick for saying, do you know what? Dyson maybe just didn't put 100% into a certain effort. And I got shot down in flames. Football players don't do that, you fucking specky, baldy bastard. But they do. They do. And let's just hope that Brendan Rodgers can get Dyson motivated, because we've got a lot of important games coming up. And it starts this weekend. Yes, it starts this weekend, as tomorrow we head down the road to Rugby Park and we take on Kilmarnock. Now, when you look at the league table, it's all sitting pretty. There's no worry at all. Celtic are sitting top of the league on 10 points. It's all been good so far. We've drawn one game. And let's face it, it was one of the worst games of football that we've seen in a long, long time. And I think it was because there were obviously players that were wanting away, players that didn't know that they were even going to get sold. And it was a very, very strange game. I think having that game just before the end of the transfer window was interesting, because I think if you had that game in 2 weeks' time, I think it would be a completely different game, and Celtic will be back into full gear by then. Celtic have played 4 games. They've won 3, drawn 1. They're sitting with 6 points at 6 goals, to the good at the top of the table on 10 points. And we head down to Kilmarnock, who are sitting in 6th position ahead of the Sevconians. Kilmarnock are wanting to try and keep as much pressure on the team in 7th position as possible. Can they get a result against Celtic? Well, going by the stats, they have drawn 4 games. They've played 4 games, they've drawn 4 games, and they're on a 0 of a goal difference. So it is up to Celtic to go and show what they're made of this weekend. And it's up to Brendan Rodgers to show that this team can get back into, never mind what's going on in the media. And I thought it was good that they put out Callum McGregor yesterday, who has the most experience. And it was right that you put out the captain yesterday, because he has more experience of the club than pretty much anyone else, rather than James Forrest. But you're not going to. He is the captain, and he took on the responsibility yesterday absolutely tremendously. When it comes to the game tomorrow, Brendan Rodgers has got a big decision to make on who starts, and we obviously know the players that are out. Do we do a prediction on the play? Nah, I don't think we even try and predict the team. I think we just leave it to see what Brendan Rodgers comes up with tomorrow. It's going to be a makeshift back 4 for real. Going into the season. And I think still a lot of us are bemused the fact that we're going to go into the season with Liam Scales and Cameron Carter-Vickers as your main back line. I don't think that anyone at Celtic would have thought that that would be the case, because you're always thinking that you're going to bring someone in a bit better to push Liam Scales on. We've brought in Jamas Simpson-Posey, who's a lone player. And let's face it, Austin Trusty's out injured. Scales has got a free run. He's got a complete free run. So, it'll be an interesting one to see if Cameron Carter... You have to start Cameron Carter-Vickers. It's as simple as that. You start with Scales, you start with Cameron Carter-Vickers. They're the most experienced players at the back that we have. Do you drop Cameron Carter-Vickers and put in young Dane Murray? Nah, not a chance. Not at all. You don't do that at all, because if Brendan was to, it would probably create an outcry if we dropped any points. The midfield will be interesting, because you're going to have Cal Mack and then Rio Hatate and one other. And then the forwards, it's all up in the air. I think we will start with Balwishka, but who knows? I'm not even going to predict it. I'm not even going to predict it at all. I'm going to wait till tomorrow and see the team that Brendan Rodgers puts out. We will be live an hour and a half. Vickers on that plastic pitch. A lot of people saying that he won't play. Who else do we have? This is the issue that Brendan Rodgers has. If you don't play Cameron Carter-Vickers, you're playing Scales and someone else. And that's not exactly... No, Cameron Carter-Vickers isn't injured. It's not exactly frightening to the Kilmarnock defence, is it? I mean, they are the draw specialists, but it'll all come down to what Celtic can do up front. When you look at the players that are out on loan, I mean, we're not even been talking about this yet. I mean, you've got Rocky. You've got, 3, 6... Now you've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got over 10 million. This is what's crazy about this window. We've got over roughly about £10 million worth of players out on loan. That's mad. And we've not even spoke about that yet. We've got Rocky, who cost 4 million out on loan with option to buy. Lewis Palmer, 3 out on loan, option to buy. Stephen Welsh, I mean, the value of Stephen Welsh has to be in and around the 3 million mark. Adam Montgomery, and then Odom Ohm, who come in, what was it? He was 1.8 or something, can't remember. But collectively, those players are worth £10 million to Celtic, and they're out on loan, which is absolute madness that nobody's even spoken about. Anyway, that is your Celtic news this morning. Brendan Rodgers making international headlines. And then you've got Football Insider 247 coming out with just complete bullshit. Brendan Rodgers was very honest yesterday. And I think that a lot of us that watched that 30-odd minute interview that Celtic put out hours later than normal, I think that the PR guy must have been going through it and thinking, can we cut any of this out? But it's already out there. The information was already out there, so Celtic really couldn't edit anything out the interview. Brendan Rodgers says that he's going to be here for the rest of the season. You'll have people that will try and push Brendan Rodgers out before the end of the season. Him and the squad are in a good place. The players are in a good place. Everyone knows what job needs to be done now. And it's back to business tomorrow with Celtic. Nothing but full points and back up the road. Even if it's a 1-0 hell of a ugly game, I don't care. It will all be about collecting the 3 points and making sure that we stay top of the table at the end of the weekend, because that's all that matters. You know, the media will jump onto the whole fans coming in on the 12th minute protest. They'll take a negative connotation to that. They'll take pictures of our power brokers sitting in the stand to get the expressions on their face when the fans are singing against them. But let's just stick together, and that's what's the most important thing. Back the team as much as we can and just take it from there. We've got a league to win. We've got a treble to try and win. And I still think that Brendan Rodgers and the players will want to go out this season more than anything now. I think that Brendan Rodgers will want to prove his doubters wrong, and he'll want to go out. And if it is the last season, Brendan Rodgers did say that, look, when I signed I said I would stay for the minimum of 3 years. I want to stay longer, but if it doesn't happen, it's football. He is still going down the road in the narrative that he wants Celtic to be the best they can. But to be the best they can, they have to get players in early. They have to get players in early for Champions League qualifying games. They have to have the best possible team ready at the start of pre-season. He's not changing his tune, Brendan. So all fingers are pointing at the board. Anyway, the spin is already at work, Baz. It is. And it's a case of, do you know what? We need Brendan Rodgers here at the end of the season, because it doesn't matter what your thoughts are on him personally. Now is the wrong time completely to change the manager. Always back the team 100%. And on that note, it's been absolutely fantastic. I might jump on later on this afternoon to get the full-time scores, but we'll wait and see. Anyway, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.